Yeah, agreed.
Okay, in theory, we're live, and it's been a couple of weeks, but welcome. I'm Alan, and the rest of the people around me are the open source team at Anchore, who work on such wonderful tools as Syft and Grype that you can see on your screen right now. We do this almost every Thursday, except when I'm at an event, and I've had 2 weeks of being at events, so that's why this hasn't happened. Sorry about that. So, hopefully I am audible and people can hear and see. Good. You can hear me. That's good. That's always a bonus. And I can hear all of you. We've already tested that. So, we do this some Thursdays, and we go through things that need discussing in the open source world at Anchore. Let me just check. It says excellent connection in YouTube. I'm not entirely sure I believe it. No, it's all good. Panic over. You'll find all the code that we talk about here on GitHub in our Anchor organization, and you'll find this being discussed on the discourse instance, which is linked from the open source page, anchor.com/open source. That's the first port of call. So, has anyone got anything? Welcome, by the way, chaps. Has anyone got anything they want to talk about first?
Nothing from my end.
Okay. So usually we dive into issues that have needs discussion, and I'm not sure how many we have. Not many. So we'll take the first one. Make this slightly larger. This one is 2537 on Grype. I'll paste it in the chat for you so you can see it. And it is about matching U-boot if type is set to firmware. We haven't discussed this before, I don't think, but I think we have, but not this specific issue. So this is a firmware device by the look of it, and an SBOM is passed with a component U-boot. There's no match if the component type is set to firmware. If I change that to application, the component is matched as expected. So this is the type of thing. And should U-boot be a firmware thing, or should it be an application, I guess?
Well, let's say it's a firmware thing, but yeah, that last comment there is the thing. So when we decode the Cyclone DX SBOMs, we look at the type and only include certain things that seem to fit in our model. And so like firmware is not one that we include today.
Okay.
But it doesn't look like it's going to be an issue for vulnerability matching, because the CPE in that uboot.json is for an A type, an application. So is that it sounds like what you found was the only blocker potentially? Yeah, I think that's it. I can't
So
think
is
of
this
anything.
just?
Huh?
I guess
well-
so. What we're saying, I think, is that sort of the Syft data model, which is like SBOM data object, which is sort of originally developed to describe what's in a file system, doesn't have a spot to put a firmware Cyclone DX entry. Is that sort of the problem, or?
Well, I can't think of a reason why we wouldn't actually include firmware
Yeah.
here. I mean, in other words, like it's software, so like and it's a SBOM, so like it should be included. Actually, let me go look at the. It might be that they added firmware as a type after the fact, and like the definitions drifted from like the original code here, or maybe we just never included it.
Yeah, it definitely could have been an oversight.
Yeah, I think it's as simple as let's add it, and then that's it.
Have you
Somewhere
found
there's
the spec?
a like GUI of the spec with like showing like required fields and enums and stuff. That wasn't quite it.
No, no.
Maybe
Isn't
the
that one?
JSON reference or
I
it's
pasted
the
a link
link
to it.
Oh, you've got it, have you? Okay, cool. Thanks. No, well, that didn't work. Copy and paste fail. Ah, okay. There we go.
So, I mean, I think what Alex said was right. We just should add this. I think for the ticket, it's ready and good first issue. If somebody cares to add it as quickly
Yeah.
as they can.
So
Yeah.
one liner to unit test, right? Because it makes the same kind of entry as other software, right? Should we drop a code link and what if we're gonna say good first issue and not make people read the whole code base?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Who's doing that then? Well volunteered, Will.
The
Well, I
code
mean,
I want to link was just on the screen. I
the
don't know.
comment has that we're looking at has
Oh,
that
there's
link
already a
right
code
there.
link.
That there, yeah.
Thanks,
It's that
thanks, Keith.
thing.
That's what we need. So I think this is just ready to go.
Nice. Oh, sorry. Someone else picking that up? Alex, Keith, Will?
As in, like, go do it, or are you saying?
Yeah, just leave a comment and
Oh,
change that.
I can move it.
Sweet. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. So the next one. Are we done with that one? Yeah.
I talked about it. So okay, so this one was interesting. So this is there was recently the high profile I believe this GHSA, if we look it up, is the
yes.
recent like the recent drama around getting the entire repo owned for many versions and having malware in it. So this particular GitHub action had retroactively modified version tags to reference a commit. Somebody like force pushed some tags and so one, this is why you should refer to GitHub actions by SHA and not by commit SHA and not by tag, because tags are mutable. And commit SHA, somebody would have to come up with malicious code that has the same digest, which is harder. So yeah, if you're using it like that way, you were safe. If you had like at v10, you were running malicious code with this action. So GitHub Security Advisory has a bunch of different ecosystems. We pull in the ecosystems we think we can vulnerability match against. At least until recently, we did not pull in GHSA for basically two reasons. One, the version typically found in the GitHub action is a commit SHA, which isn't comparable, right? I can't look at one and say it's less than or more than another. So our usual matching doesn't work as well. And two, I think there are 23 GitHub action CVEs in the GitHub Security Advisory database, so it wasn't at the top of our list of ecosystems to pull in because it's so sparsely populated. But requester of this issue has a really good point. This was an important issue. So I think what we've done for this, I believe, Alex, you made a change to Syft so that now we pull in if you do like the uses. I can't remember the GitHub Actions syntax, but if you do at SHA and then a YAML comment with the version, we'll use that version in the comparison. So we can at least try to change. There's a convention that like, for example, Dependabot will follow. You have this uses line, and then that's the git commit digest for the version that represents the version of this action that you want to use, and then you can do a space and then comment and then like v 4.2.1, and that
There's a link, Alan, in the bottom of this issue to what Will is talking about.
that might
In
help.
case you want to show. If you go all the way to the bottom, you'll see the parse GitHub Actions comments, Syft 37, yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
And the description kind of shows an example of what it's catching now, like that.
Yeah, so we'll use that for comparing to the versions that are disclosed as vulnerable.
Does the vulnerability report only ever mention the version and doesn't actually mention the SHA sum, even though most people use the SHA?
I don't know that most people use the SHA. You're definitely supposed to.
Well, okay.
It's definitely documented. I think it's documented as a best practice, but I think it is in the like regular flossing camp right now of best practices.
Yeah, I mean, like the bone data tends to not have the commit. It tends to always reference the version. So
Right.
it's a perfect, storm for there being issues in matching.
Yeah. So we don't because unless you have the Git repository, you can't decide whether one commit is later than another. We're doing semantic version parsing of the tag. The person could actually also have actions checkout at v4.2.2, in which case we just use that. So this enhancement is parsing the version string out of the comment. There's nothing stopping a person from doing that wrong. I will say in its favor, if you get it right, Dependabot, when it bumps your action, will also bump the comment. So once you get them lined up, Dependabot will see this and keep the comment up to date. So if you're using sort of the best practices way of referring to actions and you're using Dependabot to update it, it'll keep the YAML formatted in such a way that Syft will find the right version.
That's kind of the driver for this too. So usually if there was something like code comments and we were doing a source analysis, we would not use code comments as evidence of installation or whatnot. But we do use evidence from automated tools. So whatever that evidence is. And so it just so happens that Dependabot uses these very specific comments as, it will automate, bumping those. Thus it's I think valid evidence in this case, where usually we would not, look at something like this.
If you want to look at one of our repos, if you want to find Dependabot bumping a GitHub action at one of our repos, maybe this is risky to do on the air, but you should find it doing the right thing and referenced by SHA. So just
no, I'm just trying to make sure I don't show something I shouldn't.
Syft, yeah.
Yeah. And so there should be some pull requests. And then there are labels. See dependency. Yeah, exactly. So bumping SBOM action.
Yeah.
And so you can see it bumped the comment too, which I think is a nice little detail for the maintainers of Dependabot, because otherwise it's very hard to see you turned an opaque string that's really long into a different opaque string that's really long is not the most elucidating change. So having that little comment also in the diff is super cool. And then it looks like you also turned on the ecosystem now.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So if we do that GrypeDB search that was complained about in the original issue, it should find it now.
But is that straight away, or is that
you could just you should be able to just run that command and it should work now.
You have how old your database?
Old. Probably a day or two, I would like to hope.
Well, it should have found it then.
We will never know.
Is that the right command?
Yep.
I just copy and pasted it straight from there.
Actually, if you do a GrypeDB vuln search, that's going to be a little more correct.
Is it
Ooh,
Search
right.
volume.
Yeah, search volume. Sorry.
Volume.
Okay, I'll take a look at that. So
Looks like we I thought we were going to get to close this, but it looks like we
Yeah.
don't. So that's exciting.
Is it this is that PR has landed and
yeah, it did.
So there's the
Oh.
Syft PR.
I didn't
is the
make
funnel PR? Is the funnel PR not released?
there's no
Is that
release.
what's going on?
Right, right.
Then.
That's what's going on. So
Right.
like everything's queued up, but like funnel has not been released yet. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
we're actually looking at a Syft PR, not the funnel PR. But
yeah.
We
That
can
one's
show
also
the link.
linked in the issue. So
Yeah, we can show the funnel PR real quick, just so
it's at the bottom
if we
here.
want to. It's linked in the tab you were just on.
In here.
At the bottom.
Yeah. Ta-da.
Nice.
Yeah. So this is, we're just allowing like, hey, we should, we're including those GitHub security advisories in the database now as of whenever we release funnel.
Nice. Also, I've learned something today. I didn't know you could get that back, and then I guess I can display that to see how many vouchers I can still use with GitHub. Anyway, that's unrelated. So that's those two. And so that actually, okay. So all we're waiting to do is release funnel.
I just kicked off a release. So
Is
Nice.
Yeah.
Live
and
releasing software, what, like directly while we're doing a live stream?
Is Grype gonna match on this? I guess the stock matcher will do Samver and it'll just work. Is that probably just work for some value? Just work? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, first things first, plumb the data through, and if there's any matcher update, we can make that after the fact too. So
yeah, that makes sense. No point in building the matcher.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay,
cool.
I doubt there are any pull requests there's no pull requests that have needs. And I don't know what else you want to talk about.
I don't think we're to bug roulette / triage board. So
well, we can do
poison.
bug roulette. I spotted this one, which I thought was interesting because it's old and it's just a bug, but it's a stereoscope.
Let's see, Alfredo.
I'm going to say this one is likely to not happen anymore. I have not seen this and I've been looking a lot at stereoscope logging over the past couple of weeks.
October 8th, 2020. Oh yeah, this is 3 major refactors back.
Yeah.
So, of that file in particular. So yeah.
Is it worth just closing and saying like, I don't know, closing is stale, closing is...
Yeah, I'm working on it, so I'll close it. I'll add a little comment.
That was easy.
That's great.
And we've done those two. Yeah, we're really shrinking these down. This is great. I love it. Should we grab another one of these, or you all right with us? A random community PR from a year ago in Stereoscope.
Do it.
Reading Docker socket host location from the current Docker, it resolves the issues. Oh, this is a PR. Okay.
So you see what the code looks like?
I'll just paste it in the chat so you can look at it locally and you don't have to wait for me to scroll like a slow person. Okay. What is it they're doing?
So Docker has the notion of contexts now, which I guess are like bundles of config, sort of. I don't know. I'm not going to explain it well because I don't understand it well. The internet.
Yeah, I mean, I think this came around with like the Q pedal config context. It's the same thing that just got ported over to Docker. So it's
What's this one that's closed? Oh, that's the new one, I guess. Yeah, that's the one I already had open. That's the old one. Do we want to do PR reviews in here?
I mean, for this PR, probably not. This is going to need like, hey, let's make certain it lines up with like local environment behavior. So, like, whereas this probably might be another PR that will be more worthwhile to do so. Not against PR reviews on the live stream, but
okay. I just
but
worry
against
that
extensive manual testing ones.
yeah.
It's like 18 months old, and I wonder how many others there are that are. We've got a couple of relatively new ones that are just bumps. Yeah. So we have a few that are a little bit crusty that could do with an eyeball.
Yeah.
But not necessarily right now. Okay. Do you want me to try and find something that's a bit less hairy?
Yeah, we got the triage the triage board too. So
Yeah, we could do that.
what's this one? Yeah.
This is Grant. This is an issue. Beneficial if the grant allowed defining a rule that matches no license. Oh, so if something doesn't have a license, you want to be able to reject that or block or gate on that, I guess. Packages with no license slip through the denial rule. Not found a way to deny them with a custom rule.
This is
Status is
this
in
is marked in progress. So I think Chris is actively working on this so that
yeah, just let you know. I don't forget this. It's in the background. Okay. Okay, so this is on. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'll leave that one alone then. Do you want me to look at the project board then?
Yeah, that sounds
Let's
good.
do it.
Actually, I've got a link to it here somewhere, haven't I? That one. Check it out.
And it's the second tab.
There it is.
triage that tab. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's a bit.
Did you add the false positive back in?
I decided that the filter of false positives is not going to do us much good in the planning for Grype 1.0 world. So, I mean, so just to expose that thinking. So we're in the process right now of planning for or early planning for Grype 1.0. Like, so getting Grype to a stable point, and part of that is kind of categorizing. Like, what are the classes of false positives we typically see that we think really need to be addressed? You know, not just like the individual issues themselves, but like, hey, these 10 false positives have the same underlying mechanism. Like, that needs to be accounted for generically. So that's why I got rid of that filter.
Okay. So Syft is okay. We can take a look at the GHSAs too.
So what's that saying? We see their unknown package. Is that what it's?
So I think what I think what the poster is doing is they're proving the first command is proving that Syft finds a package they expect to be vulnerable to these GHSAs.
Oh God. Sorry, I can't read.
No, I was about to do the same thing, and then I saw you do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see.
The rest of it's fine.
Okay. So I think the first question I want to know when we're looking at a, sorry, Alex, you were about to say something. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so this is a false negative, a claim of missing something because reasons. And so I'm looking at, but like the ones in question are like system.blah, system.blah. These are related to the .NET runtime itself, and that cataloger just got heavily refactored. So I'm kind of curious what this does nowadays. But Will,
Yeah.
what were you going to say?
I was going to ask, well, it looks like we find fewer random unknown things. Right, the runtime, those packages, but the first two are still found. The thing I want to understand is what the GHSAs say, right? The first thing I want to do with a false negative is convince myself that it really shouldn't have been found, right? And so, okay, Microsoft.data.sql client, system.data.sql client, less than 4.8.6. What's the other one?
Oh my gosh. SQL client
Sorry, what's
486. Yeah, less than 486,
well,
but
we have
we have.
486 present.
Yeah.
And so what's the other one? 4.700, which is because that's a
Yeah.
confusing version number and seems
We don't see it now.
If we look below, Weston mentioned that looks like it's the assembly version, but maybe there's like, this could be very well what you were saying, Alex, is that like it's picking up some values in kind of like not the best way for some of these.
Yeah. Right now, I'm still trying to understand. Well, I'm pulling down the images and trying it out, but
Yeah, I didn't learn my lesson. I just ran that, and it was not insignificant. Whoops.
yeah. So one of the things I want to understand is if we can tell whether the tag moved.
When was this reply from Weston? Oh, this is a year ago.
It is from a year ago. I thought it was from a month ago for just a second. Okay. So Syft does not find the vulnerable package today? Is that like, that's what I'm trying to understand is like, see, he finds
Which one?
system.data.client 4.8.5 when he ran that command.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
And
we're
it's now
finding
that.
4.8.6. And so it could be that, for example, Microsoft have retagged this image or something, especially if they like made a totally compatible security patch to the .NET runtime in it. Like, I don't know. But let's see. There might be digests are there digests in his output?
When was this last changed? 3 days ago. So.
Well, it doesn't mean they. Oh, yeah, because the tag is just. Can we look at the blame and see if they're changing the .NET SDK version? Sorry, the blame, not the history.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, see, 3 days ago they changed the .NET version in this Docker file. But the path has like the whole tag in it, right? 8.0 CBL Mariner 2.0 ARM 64v8. So I suspect we don't have access to the image that was causing this false negative. I think it's now a true negative because the .NET runtime has been updated. So we're not able to test. I think we could like make a Syft JSON SBOM and like doctor the SBOM to like lower the version of this component and pass it to Grype, but I don't know. How do we want to proceed? Because we know we have a different .NET cataloger now. Um, we don't know the digest of the old. Um,
Is it
I'm
not?
still trying to convince myself of the basics first. Like, it's like here we have like system data SQL client in the SBOM. Let's see.
okay.
But
Is it a case of like, can I just like throw that on the end, or does that not work? Like,
I think it.
bob it on the end. Will it? It's
I
already
think
got
you need to.
nuke that
I
bit.
think that syntax is wrong.
Yeah.
But it will also
Oof.
not necessarily work.
What? Because they may
Alex
have
is on a
removed it.
different thread that's probably more fruitful than the one I'm on. Alex, what were you trying to say?
well, I'm more just trying to make certain I understand that 4.6. Yeah, I mean, we effective version is less than 4.8.4. We say system data. Okay, I'm seeing that there's a system data SQL client, and we are getting this directly from the DLL. And there isn't. Oh yes, okay. Yeah. If you take a look at the Syft JSON SBOM, and you look at the package that's called this, so if I'll plop a command. So if you get the SBOM on disk, I'll give you a command.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a look at like all the things that are present. There's actually two, which is interesting. Okay, cool.
Zoom, OBS, and Syft all fighting for the CPU in my laptop.
Oh, maybe I should have just given you the JSON. Okay, here.
It's fine.
Here is some JSON too.
It's all right. We're there.
Okay.
What did I call it? .NET. .json. Okay.
All right. So there's two packages that are spit out here. So they come from the same catalog, the .NET Depths binary cataloger.
Mm-hmm.
That cataloger is considering two things in combination: the depths.json and any DLLs it finds. Let's ignore the first package. The first package is just like from the runtime directory. If you look at the locations path, you'll see it's like, this is a SQL client deep within like the runtime directory. So let's just sort of ignore that for a little bit. The next one, it's a pairing of two locations. It is a posh.deps.json and this specifically this DLL. So take a look down at the very bottom now at the metadata. This is the stuff that it's fun to look at. Like, so here, like I'm seeing 4.8.6 specifically pulled down. This was pulled from the depths.json. That top section is really like the depths.json entries. whereas everything below in the executable is being paired up with this like assembly version 4.6.1.6, and notice the product versions is 3.1.39. There is a long thread in some of the old .NET PE issues that point out that using the product version is very tempting, but is technically not valid when you're looking at the system runtimes. Instead, like you have to use, I think it was the assembly version, if I remember right, as a basis. But I mean, we have a deps.json here. It could be that there's a bug that this deps.json should have never been paired up with this DLL, which would be very annoying.
I think we're off on sort of a weird tangent, because the in the original post they're finding version 4.8.5, which they consider vulnerable, and which NuGet, like the GHSA, lists as vulnerable. But 4.8.6 is the patched version. So I think this tag moved. So we're not really testing the same thing that they saw.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that's okay. So that's true. So like, in other words, we're finding 4.8.6, thus it's fine. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Right. But like they were finding 4.8.5 at the time. And if you look at the GHSA, which is a good source for like reasonable version numbers, 4.8.6 is the patched version. So that makes me think we have like the right number of periods and like the right order of magnitude. So I think that, you know, the 4.700 is right out. But I think so I think that I don't know why it was a false negative at the time. I agree, if we found 4.8.5 and didn't match, it would be
Yeah, has that behavior changed? Because Weston pointed out later in the ticket, if you use the plus.deps cataloger, it did match. I wonder if there's some inversion there, right? Like we were using the assembly version before when this ticket was filed, and now we're not, because like it looked to me like the version that was in the top level record of the JSON you shared would have matched the GXSA if it had
Yeah,
been
I mean,
45.
yeah, it's what you're saying, because like the core refactor in that was to combine those two catalogers. So the one that Weston's saying to enable, that makes it work. Those are now merged together into one, which is why it's picking up on it now. Well, but we have a patch version, so
yeah. But if you change that in the SBOM to 4.8.5, it might pop, right?
Yeah, a real easy thing to do.
Right.
What, as in edit this SBOM and change just that to 4.8.5?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Every occurrence, or
Just the, I think just the main one, but
yeah. So the CPEs we shouldn't be using for this type of match.
no idea if I did the right one. No. Ah, there we go. Boom.
There it is.
Finds it. And so I think this was fixed by the .NET Cataloger refactor work that Alex did. Apparently it was also fixed by the .NET team in terms of like patching the image.
But I'm only using the
team
SBOM cataloger there.
No, you're adding the
adding,
SBOM
sorry.
cataloger.
And the .NET one will also be on by default.
Yeah, the .NET cataloger is on by default.
Oh,
so
course, yeah. Nice.
So I think we've proved that if that version were present today, we would find it today. So maybe we can close as fixed and reference the Syft release notes. Does that sound good?
yeah, I'll add a comment on this one.
Nice.
Cool. All right. Let's do another one.
Right.
We still have time, right? We didn't spend our whole hour looking at.
No,
Okay,
God, no.
yeah, we
Oh,
still
my
have time.
life. Look at what on
There's a
earth?
lot of false positives.
Is that
Yeah.
is that one the
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think we
that's the
just
one we
looked
just
at
looked
that
at.
one. Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of these false positives, we have one very dedicated person who's pointing out all the deltas between like SUSE patching RPMs that bring Python packages and us matching against the PyPy vulnerable versions. And that's something we're working on. Let's see. I just think failure code's based on.
Ooh.
I think we had a similar request earlier, and I think we actually merged it where like if GrypeDB update fails, you can get like you can set Grype to like fail with a different return code if the DB update failed instead of like the scan or something.
It fails with a code 100. There's actually another thing that got merged recently, which causes exit code 2 to be returned in Grype instead of exit code 1 if it is a vulnerability exceeds the threshold failure.
Oh, why did we decide to use 2? That's a surprising decision to me. Just because the Go runtime sets exit code 2 on a panic. And so that in my head, Go binaries have exit code 2 reserved for unhandled runtime panic. But yeah, but anyway, so Grype normally exits 0 and just tells you what vulnerabilities are there. If you do dash dash fail on high, then we'll exit 2 if there was a high. Is that what you're telling me, Keith?
Yep.
Okay,
I
cool.
believe that's the current behavior.
Yeah, we should.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Is that released?
I don't know.
I
Okay.
think so.
It may not.
I would really, if it's not released, I would really like to make it not be 2, just because, like, I don't know. I have definitely written automation that counts on the fact that like exit code 2 is bad. Like, because the Go runtime has like a hard coded value that on unhandled panic it says exit code 2. Which is a nice thing to know, right? Like if Grype exited 2, it's because we had an unhandled panic, but we also like we'll never know unless somebody tells us, what does this person want? Let's focus on
actually,
that.
it has not been released. Sorry, I lied.
I see. So
That's really the crux, is they want like different return codes for different states.
right. So I guess what they want to have common failures, network issues. So I think we do have we had a lot of discussions around setting a particular return code if GrypeDB update fails. I don't remember the result of them, but that was a long time ago. So I think that's merged and released.
The only thing that it does is when you run GrypeDB update specifically, though, it doesn't like change any of the behavior if you run Grype normally and some network thing happens and it fails to download the database. Those are still all just lumped into the normal error handling, which I think ends up with error code 1 for everything, because we just kind of like pass that off to Cobra.
I think there's there at least used to be a special exit code for I wanted to update the database in it and it didn't. Or
Right,
maybe
there
the
is.
person wanted, yeah. Okay, so the request here is that like network issues, file format issues, configuration errors, etc. I mean, I could see some of this being nice. Like we have an exit, like we could say like, hey, we failed to parse the config file, right? We failed to pull the source. We failed to find a format to decode the SBOM. Like, those could have different return codes. That's not a crazy thing to ask.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. I think this is just, I don't know, this is maybe just ready. Do we want to, it doesn't seem very interesting on air to argue about like which features have which return codes, but I think like if we're doing a thing that we know might fail, like you told me that this file.json is an SBOM and you might just be wrong, right? That might fail. We're loading a config file. You could have anything you want at that path. It might be wrong. It might just fail. We're trying to ask like Docker or Podman for something. It might just fail. We're trying to, so I think that's,
Yeah, for me, it's about the specific proposal because I like a lot of the time for me, like the more detail you want, the more you're supposed to look at the logs, and like the return codes are great for like high level classes of failures. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe we should just be careful to not make this too detailed per se.
yeah. Right. But I think there's sort of like, we could have, I guess then we could have like a really quick proposal, which is like, bad options are config, right? Like the command Grype was just invoked in an invalid way. Flags didn't parse, config file didn't parse. Grype is just invoked in an invalid way. Try again. We have -- fail on tripped, right? And we couldn't get the source, right? You told me to scan a thing and that's not a real file, or it's not a real SBOM, or I couldn't get it from Docker. So those are sort of the three big ones, right? Does that seem like a granularity you could get behind, Alex?
Yeah, I think that sounds right. So it's config input, I guess image input, and the other one's just like report could not be obtained essentially.
I think
Yeah,
like database too. That like if we're promoted that like error code 100 or something different for like I couldn't download the database, like that type of stuff, that seems like a unique class of things too.
Yeah, I agree with that. So like, database cannot be, I mean, I feel like it's one big class, like just database failure is like one whole class. Yeah.
Yeah, something went wrong with
right.
Yeah.
Right. The problem is the input or config. The problem is the database, or the problem is the source. Right. That is the thing we're scanning, the scan target. What do you
just put some like hot garbage in this Grype YAML.
Yeah, so the deserializer by default is going to ignore unknown keys. So what you'd have to do is pick an enum and like
that.
But now that's under an unknown key, so it doesn't matter, right? Because you didn't change logs back. Yeah. Or you could get something of the wrong type, like if you go through and change. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I think that
I think there is room for improvement there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're going to be really coarse, but I can see that, especially if you're doing CI and like the network, like your Docker pull doesn't always work, and it's annoying to see like, did -- fail on trip, or did Docker pull fail, right? Is this a retry, or is this a block the pipeline and tell somebody to come patch it? Those are very different things. So
yeah,
this feels like a good idea.
Cool.
And something we should just like, is this a ready? I mean, it looks like someone just has to make the decision and it'll come up with a list of like the various return codes.
Yeah, I'm putting something together now.
Nice.
cool.
Yeah, I think I just captured that in the issue. So basically I got return code 10, 11, 12, 13, unless we want to choose something more specific. So
the one thing I'll put out is that it shouldn't be, but it could be a breaking change for somebody who is actually like explicitly checking for exit one. And it's just something to keep in mind here.
Yeah. Add it to the
1.0.
1.0 milestone.
Nice.
Right,
Yeah,
because we're not gonna add new exit codes during 1.0.
I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. We got time for one more?
Sure.
Send Stereoscope created OCI layers to temp directory.
Oh, I was just looking at this moments ago. Oh, I know this very well what it's doing. So I'm pretty sure what he's asking is when Stereoscope parses an image, it saves each layer tar to a temp directory.
Mm.
But I don't think you can specify what that directory is.
Really? Not tempter, isn't it? Tempter?
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
well,
But
it's via the
it-
environment
it-
variable, but
That doesn't seem like.
I-
I'm not
I think
sure.
there should probably be a better way. It's more
I
than
don't
just that.
know.
So. You shouldn't have to be able to. You shouldn't have to change your entire, like applications temp directory to somewhere else in order to get Stereoscope to write somewhere different. So.
He's saying things are created in the OCI directory. Like he's making a really specific claim. I don't know what the OCI directory is, but the original poster here is saying that you're bloating the size of the OCI directory with these layer cars. And I don't know exactly. I'm not aware of a directory just called the OCI directory, but I might just be missing something.
I'll tell you what, let me follow up with some questions on this one. I can.
Okay.
I'll
Yeah,
do
that
that.
seems like a reasonable one. But I think if we're respecting the environment variable temp dir, that's like, and the Windows version of it. I think Windows also has an environment variable you can set. I think if we're respecting both of those, then we're compliant with what people think it should do, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I definitely just got to run this to reproduce this. They provided a reproducible full application. Should be able to.
Right. Well, and it's a
saying.
stereoscope specific thing too, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what hints there should be something in the API to allow folks to control this, not just.
Oh yeah, that's fair. Right, maybe you're an application linking this, depending on Stereoscope, and you don't want to just mess with environment variables. You want to set it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool. So this is. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I want to say that there's kind of a larger tech debt cleanup around temp directory creation in Stereoscope in general. So right now we have this global singleton temp directory generator. This the fourth to last line there, file.new temp dir generator. That ultimately is referencing a singleton, and the goal is to remove all use of that singleton entirely, and instead kind of do that poison pill pattern where you're passing in any resource, even these generators via context. And so cleanup would be responsible by the caller, as opposed to having some global that you would say, call cleanup on. So I that. There's something that's kind of tied into this as well. So if we're gonna tackle something about tailoring the temp directory generation, we should probably also go ahead and try to tackle that tech debt too, and just get rid of that singleton. That really does need to go away. So
that one's definitely, I'm just going to say, I totally agree, but that one's tricky because this one has to live longer than the function. So
yeah, and this is I think that's what's going to hint at having a Stereoscope client object or something, because if then you have a Stereoscope client object that you would call cleanup on, that's where the references for the stuff ultimately live. Because you're right, you want everything to persist beyond the call of reading and parsing. So
I'm curious, one of the other things that has been asked for is caching of images too. It's sort of in some ways at odds with what we do today, but seems like we might want to consider all of this together if we do end up kind of refactoring some of this.
Right. Well, and that matters more with the registry client, I think, because the Docker client, like Docker does a lot of layer caching, and we benefit from that if we're using Docker to pull the things.
But
If
then
we're talking to the red, go ahead.
we still then have to do a Docker save. And that takes like a potential considerable amount of time. And so like if we had that around, or the resulting layers in a cache, like we'd be able to scan things much more quickly if we had to do repeated things.
Right. Well, and they are content addressable, right? Because they've got the digest. So we just need a LRU cache. Key is the digest. Value is the tar or the path to the tar or whatever. That seems doable.
I mean, I'm also, this is slightly off topic. I'll mention it anyway, though. Like that, I think taking a closer look at like the container D store and like, all the changes that have been made over the years, and maybe attempting to say bypass the Docker daemon in a lot of this. Like, so if you know, because the Docker daemon is wrapping container D in a lot of cases, you know, you still have a Docker desktop use case to worry about. But let's just say that, you know, say for a second we have a solution for that. We can get into that VM in a kosher way. Then if we can bypass the need to cache any of it, like in other words, we don't need to call Docker image save, that would be the most ideal, because that saves a bunch of time, effort, storage, cache busting, you know, schemes. Like I would love to also look at that or consider that while looking at this stuff, if we were looking at caching.
So is this need a status update of some kind? Or is it just an enhancement that someone needs to look
I'm going
at?
to follow up with questions.
Okay.
Typing them up right now.
Oh, sweet. Perfect.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, I don't think we've got time to dive into another one. So I think we should wrap up at that point because we're very nearly the top of the hour.
No, click a false positive. It'll be great. No, I'm just kidding. Kidding.
Don't you make me choose a Java one. Like, there we go. Oh my God.
Kidding.
No. Thank you, chaps. It's always entertaining and informative, and hopefully we'll see you again next week. Thanks everyone for joining, and thank you, chaps, for your excellent knowledge on all these topics. I'll see you all again